Great. Well, welcome everyone. And yeah, this week we thought we'd have a little look at mindfulness of thoughts, something that is always in our mind, always coming up, or maybe not always. So let's just start with a little landing practice just to settle into the moment. So maybe if you want to just settle into a comfortable position, then you can close your eyes or lower your gaze, whichever you prefer. And maybe just start by taking a few deeper breaths and maybe even a stretch, just to kind of really feel your body. Notice the breaths that are arising. Maybe drop out of a busy morning or a busy weekend. And really, it's just an invitation to awareness. Yeah, just an invitation to place the awareness on the breath as it arises and passes out of the body. Sometimes that can help just by taking those few conscious breaths, and then we relax and allow the body just to breathe in its own rhythm. And the practice is as simple as just being aware as the breath comes in through the tip of the nose, passes down our lungs and throat. Maybe just noticing the slight expansion of the chest and the lungs, and then noticing how the in-breath in turn becomes an out-breath. And just simply trying to follow that with our awareness and our attention. And perhaps investigating with curiosity, is there any difference between this breath and the next one? And just noticing the quality of each individual breath. Are they long or short, easy or labored, silent and subtle, or maybe you can hear them? There's no right or wrong. We're not looking to judge them, we're just looking to notice what's the breath like arising right now. And we use the breath in this way because this is a really easy and always accessible way to just touch base back with what's actually happening right here, right now. And there's another way too, which is just to sense what's happening in the body. So, for example, we might just place our awareness on our chest and our tummy and just notice how there's that slight expansion and contraction with each breath. And just being with that, noticing how does the body move as it breathes. perhaps noticing if we can feel the breath passing up and down the throat, or maybe just feel a slight temperature change at the tip of our nose with each passing in-breath and out-breath. And using the breath and the body in this way can be likened to having an anchor. It's like an anchor to the present moment, to what's actually happening right here, right now. Because we may also notice that thoughts arise, and it's easy to do the normal thing and to move off and to think about that thought, and then more thoughts arise, and very soon we can be away in our thoughts. And there's nothing wrong with that. At times it can be extremely helpful. But the practice of mindfulness is just to notice that, to notice when we've moved away from the present moment, from the here and now, when we're off in thoughts. And just to use these anchors to come back to just noticing what's actually happening right here, right now. Noticing the in-breath and the out-breath. Noticing the tiny changes in the body. And if more thoughts arise, then just seeing if we can notice those and give a little inner smile and return back to one of the anchors. Remembering that that is the practice, to keep waking up and coming back to the present moment. And we can use other anchors as well if we choose. You may notice that sounds arise. If we just sit and listen, and then we hear a sound arise, and notice how it arises and then passes in its own time. And sometimes a really nice way to practice can be to notice all these things happening. The breath arising, the body slightly moving, and now and again a sound arising. Noticing how everything is in a permanent state of movement, of transition. And noticing that thoughts arising and passing is just part of that. And that the invitation is to use our awareness to witness everything unfolding without particularly holding on to any individual breath or individual body movement or sensation or passing sound or passing thoughts. Instead, just exploring. Can we be in the here and now and just notice it all unfolding? Each breath, each little sound, each thought, and each rise and fall of the chest. And as we approach the end of the landing practice, we can use that as a practice in itself. Just seeing if those words, the imminent end, cause any thoughts to arise. And if they do, just noticing, oh, that's the nature of the mind. There's a stimulus and thoughts arise. I can choose to follow that into other thoughts, or I can just notice that the thoughts have arisen. But I'm going to choose to remain with one of the anchors in the here and now. And then in your own time, feel free to gently open your eyes, maybe have a stretch or a drink, and we'll come back together in a few moments. Great, thank you. So, topic for today is thoughts. And they're kind of strange things, thoughts, really. We often can feel very much like it's the inner dialogue we're talking to ourselves. Sometimes it can be easy to think that the thoughts are us. And it's clearly a big part of the practice. John Kabat-Zinn, who created the mindfulness-based stress reduction course, says of the practice that we use the breath as an anchor to tether our attention to the present moment. The thinking mind will drift here and there, depending on the currents and winds moving in the mind, until at some point the anchor line grows taut and brings us back to this present moment. And a big part of the practice is really just noticing that we always have this choice, an ability to choose to follow the thoughts as they arise. Sometimes that can be incredibly helpful. We're brainstorming or trying to create something. But just noticing that we also always have this choice to notice the thoughts, but to choose to remain with an anchor in the here and now. It could be the breath or the body or sounds or whatever we find most easy. But just using those anchors to stay connected to the current moment, to what's actually happening right here and now, is a choice that we always have. And that's not necessarily always the way we've kind of been brought up to be. All the information and adverts and prompts and television, so much movement. And indeed, one of the great meditation masters of the Thai forest tradition, Ajahn Buddhadasa, when he was asked how the modern world appeared to him from his remote forest monastery, said, lost in thought. And that's often how times can be. And it's quite interesting to hear the Buddha's thoughts about thoughts, which can be quite perplexing at first. He said, "Who is your enemy? Mind is your enemy. No one can harm you more than a mind untrained. Who is your friend? Mind is your friend. No one can assist you and care for you better than your mind well trained, not even the most loving mother or father." That could be quite sort of paradoxical, really, that this mind can be both so helpful and so harmful. Or, as the ancient saying goes, the mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And it can be really helpful and actually quite magical when we start to notice that we always have this choice, that it's not that thoughts are wrong or that they're right. Just that as we start to appreciate that with the training of mindfulness, we always have this choice to use the mind and the thoughts if that's helpful, or to notice those unhelpful thoughts arising from parts of our mind and really not particularly helpful, the inner commentary, criticism, judgments, and just choosing in those times to just remain with what's actually happening by using one of those anchors we talked about. And for many people, this is a really big realization, sometimes called seeing the waterfall. That actually, as we start with the practice, just to see thoughts arise, but choose not to follow them, we start to realize just how many thoughts there are. A bit like this kind of waterfall of thoughts coming and coming and coming. Remembering things, judging things, planning, worrying, analyzing, just this whole stream. And actually, a big part of the practice is just seeing that's there and part of the nature of the mind. There are thoughts, and with stimulus, there'll be more thoughts. We don't have to follow them. We can also just choose to use an anchor to reconnect to the here and now, and then use thoughts when it will be helpful. So with that, we're going to just try a little bit of a practice, just maybe seeing if we can visualize some of those thoughts and noticing how quickly they become this waterfall of thoughts, but also noticing how we can also use this choice just to step back and see it as a waterfall rather than engage. So with that, I'm going to invite you just to settle back into that comfortable position. And again, you can either lower your gaze or close your eyes, whichever's comfortable for you. And we'll just start by placing the attention, the awareness gently back on the breath and noticing each in-breath and each out-breath. And noticing alongside the breath that slight expansion and contraction of the chest and the body as the body just breathes naturally in its own time. And noticing alongside the breath and the body, if there are any sounds that arise and pass. Noticing the in-breath and how it becomes the out-breath. Noticing that it's very rare for us to think about an individual breath after it's happened. Just noticing how easy it is to let go of it and to be aware of the next breath. Nothing particularly special about that breath. It arose and it passed, and now it's moved off into the past and we're focused on the next one. Noticing that it's probably very similar with the movements of the body, a slight expansion and contraction of the chest and tummy with each breath. Very rarely do we keep thinking about a particular individual expansion and contraction. It's just happening. We might notice it, but then it becomes the past and we notice the next breath or expansion. And then maybe listening out for the next sound. And noticing that sounds can also be very temporal. We notice them arise and we notice them pass. They can also be a little bit more sticky. If there's something unusual about it or intriguing about it, they may prompt thoughts. And when they do, it's just seeing if we can notice that. And choose to remain in a place of awareness for the next sound, other than necessarily analyzing the one that's just happened. And noticing that the stickiness applies even more with thoughts. So if we do a little fun exercise and say, for 3 breaths, I'm just going to watch whatever thoughts come to mind. And then I'm going to just place my awareness solely back on the breath. We might start with, how do I feel today? And at the end of those 3 breaths, we might just notice, was there just one thought and then it was easy to place our awareness back on the breath or back on the body? Was it a bit more sticky and did one thought mushroom into another and another? No right or wrong. It will very much depend on all the circumstances arising right now for each of us. But just noticing, and having noticed, then just letting go of that and now noticing the next breath, then the next expansion and contraction of the body. Noticing the next in-breath, and using our anchors just to remain in the here and now. Experimenting now with something a bit more sticky. Maybe just for 3 breaths, noticing what thoughts arise when we think, I really must do this later on today. And then wherever we are now, just reuniting on the next in-breath, letting go of any thoughts, noticing the in-breath, noticing the way the body is still there, gentle expansion and contraction with each breath, and then just noticing. Was that a single thought or a couple, or was it a stream of thoughts? An invitation to inquire. If the first thought seems more pressing, just noticing that tends to lead to more and more thoughts arising. And being aware that there's no right or wrong in this. This is just seeing the nature of the mind. And noticing that we have this choice to follow it, and to go off into one thought, which will invariably become another thought and another, or just to step back and notice lots of thoughts might be arising, but I have this choice just to allow them, but to place my awareness and my attention instead on one of the anchors to the here and now. The breath arising, the body gently moving. And as the Buddha said, there can be times when this mind can be incredibly helpful. So you might pose an internal question: how can I be more supportive and helpful to someone I love? And just noticing where those 3 breaths worth of thought have taken us. And coming back with the use of an anchor to the here and now with maybe the breath or the body. Noticing the power of that creativity. How we can use the mind in a way that's helpful. And another experiment might be to just notice what arises if we stay a question that's often pretty sticky. I wish I was better at this. And again, at the end of the 3 breaths, just noticing where that's taken us. And choosing to step back and return to the here and now using one of the anchors. can be the breath, or sometimes when it's a bit of a sticky thought stream, it can be quite useful to just check in with the body, in addition to the gentle rise and fall of the chest with each breath. Has there been any kind of contraction or tension created by that question? And actually, can we use any slight change in the body? It's a really useful anchor just to notice and come back to what's actually arising. If there's any contraction or tension, can we just be with that, allowing it, but noticing it, using that as an anchor? Because that sensation and that noticing can be a really clear indication as to whether the thought stream is a helpful or an unhelpful one. If we've been brainstorming or trying to think of something creative or supportive, it may be that the sensation in the body, when we touch base back with it, is lighter, happier, freer. But noticing how the body feels if we think of something that's perhaps less helpful. As a test case, let's just try this particular thing makes me really angry. And at the end of those 3 breaths, just noticing what's happening in the body right now. And is that a clue to whether it's a helpful thought stream that we may want to stay engaged with, or one that we may choose to allow to pass by returning to one of the anchors, perhaps the anchor of the body? And an invitation just to let go of all of that now, and just to settle back onto the breath. Noticing the breath arising and then just naturally passing. Noticing the feeling of being in the here and now with the use of the breath as an anchor. And being aware that this is always here. You always have this choice just to return to this place, to wake up out of thoughts, and just to come back to what's actually arising right here, right now. And noticing that there's a clue in the sensation that we are feeling in the here and now as compared to in the thought stream. Just to whether that's a helpful thought stream that we might choose to re-engage with, or one that we might allow just to pass, just like a passing breath or a passing sound. Noticing that we always have this choice, and that it's completely up to us how we use it. And in your own time, absolutely no hurry, just feel free to gently open your eyes and we'll come back together.